There is a brand new Reuters Ipsos poll out about Americans' views on intervention in Syria. Americans strongly oppose U.S. intervention in Syria's civil war and believe Washington should stay out of the conflict, even if reports that Syria's government used deadly chemicals to attack civilians are confirmed. This from Reuters and Ipsos. 60%, that's 6 out of 10 Americans surveyed, said the United States should not intervene in Syria's civil war. 9% said President Obama should act. The remainder said they weren't sure, or we should act if other conditions were met. So there you go. 9% say get involved. 60% say no. Now, I don't view that as liberal, conservative, progressive.
Hey, Mark Taylor-Canfield. Norm.
Hey, Mark. Hi.
Better. I'm glad you're feeling better.
Thank you.
Yeah, you sound good, actually, surprisingly.
Mark, go ahead, please.
Unless you've been following my coverage at Free Speech Radio News on Pacifica, you're going to miss this. But all of the end of last week and over the weekend, there was an Occupy National gathering that took place in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And I guess the headline of that story is that Green Party presidential candidate Jill Stein addressed the group. But it was activists from all over the country and Occupy groups from Canada. There were folks there from Occupy groups in Australia and other countries. And I just, want to repeat again that the rumors of the demise of the Occupy Wall Street movement have been greatly exaggerated. And they chose Michigan, by the way, because of all the economic austerity measures that are being pushed on people there as the state and a lot of the cities.
You mean like Detroit?
Exactly. Yeah, where the mayor is now a financial manager.
Right. Well, Mark, let me ask you a question. I mean, we had Jill Stein, Dr. Jill Stein, on this radio show, and she's awesome. I mean, she's really smart, very articulate. Her values are all in the right place. I'm really glad that Occupy has not disappeared. But the question I've got to ask you is there a consensus or a belief in the Occupy movement that they've got to start running for political office? If only school board, city council, town council, before working their way up to mayor, governor, senator, that kind of thing. Is there any consensus on getting involved in politics, on actual practically running for office, taking policy positions on current issues of the day?
I wouldn't say that there's a consensus at all, but I do think that Jill Stein actually believes that there's a potential voting bloc there, and she's hoping that the occupiers will support the Green Party as an alternative to what she calls, the two corporate parties, the Republicans and the Democrats. So whether they believe it or not, she does. And when I interviewed her in Seattle last year, she was saying the same thing. So I think it's a potential. I still think that the movement has some way to go. I mean, the police wouldn't even let them use amplified sound in the park. So they're still at that level. And to tell you the truth, the main topics that seemed to get a lot of people interested had to do with international collaboration with other groups around the world, because there are Occupy groups in Brazil and all over Europe. So there were conference calls that were going on with them.
Mark, thanks. We are back with The Economy, where justice is served. You should not sell Chris Christie short. If this guy can somehow manage to get the Republican nomination, he stands a really good chance of winning the presidency. And Chris Christie has already been designated the Koch brothers' boy. He is their boy. They have flown him under cover of secrecy to their Koch brothers symposium. They have anointed Chris Christie's head with oil, as in biblical times. The Koch brothers know what they're buying in Chris Christie. They're buying a reliable big business tool. And they know he'll put on reliable big business tools on the Supreme Court. President Obama, far from perfect, much better than anything Chris Christie's going to put on there. Oh, and by the way, after Chris Christie, the Republicans get a lot worse from there. So I'll go with the Supreme Court. The stakes are just too high. The damage that the Supreme Court is doing right now is so severe. Bush versus Gore, Citizens United, the Voting Rights Act, and I could go on some somewhat more esoteric cases, the destruction of consumer rights as against big business. I could go on for a while. But the point is, the Supreme Court is radical, they're open for business, and they're very active. This is not to be played with, and it's not to be trifled with. I would take a replacement for Ruth Bader Ginsburg right now from President Obama any day over waiting to see what happens. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So there. But I've got some economic news for you. I hope you got some antacids nearby. That's in 20 minutes where justice is served. The Norm and Goldman Show.
Get Norm on your schedule 24/7 by signing up for Beyond the Norm at normandgoldman.com. Then you can hear the show commercial-free when it's convenient to you. Plus, get all the Beyond the Norm extra segments at no charge. This is the Norm and Goldman Show. This is the unfiltered truth. This is Norman Goldman.
And there is a reason why I played you 3 George W. Bush clips right there. You know, personally, now that the guy is long gone, I can't get enough of making fun of him.
No, we've had no evidence that Saddam Hussein was involved with September the 11th.
Well, I mean, look, he actually admitted the truth there about September the 11th. He finally admitted it. Why wasn't he impeached? Why wasn't he put on trial?
The point I say to you is that, you know, if what you're suggesting is that what I'm suggesting to you is if you can't name the foreign minister of Mexico, therefore, you know, you're not capable about what you do. But the truth of the matter is you are, whether you can or not.
That dude sat in the White House for 8 years. That was in 2000 when he was running for the first time, and a reporter said, "Can you name the foreign minister of Mexico?"
But the point I say to you is that, you know, if what you're suggesting is that what I'm suggesting to you is if you can't name the foreign minister of Mexico, therefore, you know, you're not capable about what you do. But the truth of the matter is you are, whether you can or not.
The question was, are you qualified to be president of the United States if you can't name the foreign minister of Mexico? And that was the dude's answer. And look, there's a reason I'm playing all these clips for you, and the reason is because today, in today's Republican Party, he's the sane one. George W. Bush is moderate compared to the current Republicans. Tom Coburn, a United States Senator from Oklahoma, which should tell you all you need to know. United States Senator, Oklahoma. You should be able to figure out the rest from there. Tom Coburn has now joined the group that's talking about impeaching the president.
What you have to do is you have to establish the criteria that would qualify for proceedings against the president. And that's called impeachment. Those are serious things, but we're at a serious time. And so whether I don't have the legal background to know if that rises to high crimes and misdemeanors, but I think they're getting perilously close.
Well, Tom Coburn is a doctor, and he's obviously not very bright. But he has been called a moderate Republican by many in the corporate media. And I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. There's nothing moderate about that dude at all. And George W. Bush, compared to today's Republicans, is moderate. And that's insane. But I have good news for you. The Republican Party is actually falling apart at the seams. 13 members of Maine, the state of Maine, way up there in the Northeast, there are 13 members, and some of them very high-ranking. They have now quit the Republican Party, and very publicly so, publishing a letter in the Bangor Daily News. They have now declared themselves not Republicans because the Republican Party is not insane enough. I'm not kidding. A Republican National Committee member. Now, you've got to be pretty high up in the Republican Party to be a Republican National Committee member. A guy named Mark Willis, a former Republican National Committee member from Maine. 6 on top of him, leaving aside him, 6 state committee members. I mean, you've got to really be involved in your political party to be a state committee member, a Maine state committee member. 6 of them and 6 other registered Republicans have not only resigned their party membership, They have resigned their state, their county, and their town committee memberships as well. They have resigned the Republican Party. They've quit, and they wrote an open letter saying, quote, "The Republican Party has lost its way." And they published this angry open letter in the Bangor Daily News. And one of the things that got them so angry, saying the Republican Party is not crazy enough, is that the Republican crazy governor of Maine, Paul LePage, actually had the nerve to veto a bill that would have allowed unpasteurized milk to be sold. I mean, they've got so many dead bodies in Syria, they don't know what to do with them. And the world's not saying, the world apparently, the message is, kill them with bullets, kill them with bombs, perfectly okay, nobody's going to pay attention. But don't you dare use those chemical weapons, then we get really upset. Really? This is the kind of world we live in? And of course, when the chemical weapons get used, everybody looks at the Americans and say, now what are you going to do about it? Now, I got to tell you, there's a lot of common ground you're going to find across the political spectrum with that policy position. Now, you can call yourself a liberal, you can call yourself a progressive, you can call yourself a conservative, you can call yourself anything you want. But if you stick to policy positions, I think you're going to find there's a very broad consensus on a lot of things where all of a sudden if you say, well, that's the liberal position, people say, liberals, I got to run the other way. Oh, no, liberal, can't be a liberal. Stop with the labeling, and you'll find a lot more common ground. If you want progress, you want to get further faster, stop with the labels. You want to win? Stop with the labels.
Talk 1260, KTRC AM Santa Fe.
NBC News Radio, I'm Betty Nguyen. There is little doubt that Syria's government used chemical weapons against its own people. That's according to the White House spokesperson, Jay Carney.
The international community has already concluded that it occurred.
Syrian rebels are calling for the U.S. to take military action against their government. NBC's Richard Engel is in neighboring Turkey.
They say if the United States doesn't intervene now, Bashar al-Assad's regime will only be encouraged to go further. And they believe use chemical weapons again.
The White House and international community appear to be considering action. California Governor Jerry Brown wants more federal dollars as crews battle the state's 13th largest wildfire in history.
It takes money, and it's going to take more money.
The rim fire raging near Yosemite National Park has consumed more than 250 square miles. A military judge will continue deciding the fate of convicted Fort Hood shooter Natl Hassan Tuesday. He could get the death penalty for the 2009 attack that killed 13 people. This is NBC News Radio. Preparations are underway on the National Mall as Washington gears up to mark the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech.
President Obama will be the main speaker Wednesday to mark the anniversary of the 1963 March on Washington. Security officials have already begun preparing the National Mall.
Anytime that you have a president of the United States involved, it's very tight security.
Mr. Obama will be joined at the Lincoln Memorial by former presidents Bill Clinton and Jimmy Carter. Tom Graham, NBC News Radio, Washington.
George Zimmerman's attorney has told the Orlando Sentinel that he plans to ask the state of Florida to cover up to $300,000 of his legal expenses. Zimmerman was acquitted of the second-degree murder of unarmed teen Trayvon Martin. And listen to this. A Kentucky preschool teacher is behind bars. She is accused of biting a 15-month-old girl as a form of punishment. I'm Betty Nguyen, NBC News Radio.